Welcome to Energypreneurs, the podcast where solar power batteries and electric vehicles come together. I'm your host, Sohail Hasni. When we combine these technologies, something powerful happens. On this show, I speak with founders, engineers, and investors who are building this fantastic new energy system. Thank you for joining. Hi, Megan. Good morning from Manila. Where are you today?
Hi, Sahel. I'm in Melbourne today, although I was in Japan last week, so it's great to be home.
Yes, I was in Melbourne last week or the week before, 46-degree days.
Yes, it's been a little bit warm here lately, every now and again.
Yeah, it was very nice to be. I have a rooftop solar and the batteries and all of those, like many people now. It was nice that earlier would have worried, oh my God, the air conditioning bill. No, you don't care. It's free. Anyway, before we get into that, maybe you introduce yourself, what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. Megan Fisher, I'm CEO and director at Energy Lab. Energy Lab is a startup support organization focused on climate tech startups. This year has been an interesting year so far, apart from grant reporting, which I can't say is the most fascinating part of my job, but it's really important. There was a lot of that in January. I headed over to Tokyo on the invite of a startup support organization there that was working with the Tokyo Metro government to come and see some startups and engage in the Tokyo entrepreneur ecosystem. So that's been a pretty interesting start to the year to see the sorts of technologies being developed in Japan, or at least also, I guess, seeking investment in Japan too. I saw quite a few internationals there as well.
Okay. So, how do you find when you go to Japan, you will see maybe is the tech a little more advanced, people are a little more conservative? It just came into mind culturally. Do you see any difference or young people are the same?
I think from a focus area, I think in general, we're so similar. There's so many more similar things about us than there are differences. Obviously, there's the way we go about doing things changes, but in so many ways, people are quite similar. I think, Japan's an incredible innovator. They're a manufacturer of lots of things. They have incredibly large corporations that build so many things in the world. I definitely saw a bit of a focus. I went to a gala. It was the tech gala, which was in Nagoya. And I definitely saw a bit of a focus coming through there that was around a focus in innovation around manufacturing. How do you improve manufacturing using AI or other mechanism? And that makes perfect sense given what the industry does in Japan. But there was also definitely an emerging sustainability element, an environmental element that was coming through that were really different things, such as organizations focused on, I guess, the biosciences. So algae growing as an alternative to sustainable aviation. I also saw a startup that I think was out of Singapore, actually, that were looking at alternative proteins. So using fish as a protein and vitamin source, but growing it instead of actually doing more fishing or doing more fish farming. So I think there's definitely a different focus in Japan than what there is that I see in Australia and some other markets, but that makes sense given their technology and capability. But there's also a real desire to get better at innovation. And in so many places I go around the world, that is always true. No matter where people are at, they want to get better. They want their startups to get better. They want the technologies to get better. So the desire to improve is always there.
Okay. Maybe you can also explain what does Energy Lab do, because I visited them a couple of times. So it was quite fascinating to be surrounded by all these young people talking so many interesting things, maybe coming from the CEOs.
Yeah, of course. So Energy Lab's been around, actually, this will be our 10th year. By the end of the year, we'll have been around for 10 years. So we started in 2017, and our goal and our focus is to help either people that want to start a startup or people in a startup that are focused on decarbonization to get to where they need to be to scale out that technology and help us decarbonize. Like that's our goal as an organization. And that involves a lot of different things for us to hit that mission. So we run 10 different programs each year focused on entrepreneurs and startups at different stages of the growth journey. So we start all the way at the beginning of I want to launch a startup, but then we go all the way through to scaling and going international. So we cover not all of a company's journey, but definitely that early stage of a company's journey from starting to growing to scaling internationally. So we run a number of different programs around that, all about gaining the expertise and the connections and the investments and the corporate relationships that you need to grow. To help us do that, we have a whole bunch of amazing experts. So we have 450 mentors, and they're experts in all sorts of different things, from industries to technology to legal to going international to IP, all the things that a startup needs. And it's a lot and it's varied. We have an angel network to really help with those very early stages of investment, where some VCs don't tend to play, like that very early pre-accelerator stage. So we have 250 angel investors. And now we also have over 300 startup alumni and another almost 200 aspiring founder alumni that have been through our program. So this is really important because these are the people with experience. These are the people that are out there doing things in the entrepreneurial world, and they can come back and share that experience and knowledge with people now coming through the program. So it's really great to be at that stage after operating for nearly 10 years. So that's what we do. We're I'd say a small team of people. We're 10 people full-time in Energy Lab, but a big network that we operate both in Australia and around the world, because Australia is only a small market. It doesn't take very long for a startup to need to go overseas. So global growth is often on the mind and in the strategies of startups from day one. So us having those relationships and connections around the world is really important too.
So the entry point, now you have angel investors, alumni, but the entry point is basically someone with an idea to come to you. And do you want to explain that a bit and what you're looking for when you're doing the initial screening? No?
Yeah, it's interesting. At the very beginning, the entry point, where we're just wanting people that want to be an entrepreneur to kickstart their startup. We're not as prescriptive as what we are when somebody comes to us at the accelerator stage. But that's right. The entry point is there. Really, we're trying to help people understand what the entrepreneurial journey is about, how to start a startup successfully, how to make sure that your idea is validated, that somebody actually wants it. So it's those early things where, again, we just want to see as many great people as possible in that network. Now, a startup doesn't go through those with us, but they come to us at the point where they would like to join our accelerator program. So we're currently looking for our 13th cohort of that program. It's the program that comes with investment from our angel network. That is a different conversation. So there we're looking for startups with technologies, and it doesn't quite matter the stage that they're at, but startups with technologies that in some way has been validated that could really make an impact in decarbonization. So we're looking for the best opportunities. But ultimately, for that program, it's our angel investors that end up deciding who the 10 startups are each year that go into the program.
So you need to back each of those ideas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the angel group, usually around 20 to 25 of our angel group get involved in that investment fund each year. And they, as a cohort of people, look across all of the startups that have applied, all the ones we have interviewed, the ones that we're recommending, and ultimately make a decision on a cohort of startups. It's not just about each individual, it's about them as a group. It's about what value each of them are going to get out of working with us. Is there value there? Are those founders going to be able to share things with other members? Are they going to be a great member of a cohort? Are they covering off different elements of technology? So we think about all of those things before we finalize that cohort of people.
And what would be sort of at that stage from the Angels Network, what sort of notional commitment of fund? Are they looking at a very large investment, small investment? How does that look?
Yeah, it depends. That for an angel looking to come into that fund, the minimum investment is around $20,000 to $25,000 Australian. But for people, I guess, that are new, or particularly for women, we don't have enough women angel investors. The minimum commitment is actually lower. We really want to encourage diversity in our angel network, in our investors, in the investing ecosystem. So we really do encourage people to come in at an earlier rate if they're, bringing in a level of diversity that we need. But generally for normal angel investors, it would be $20,000 AUD to come into that fund. But we have investors that range from that amount upwards into maybe, $150,000, $200,000 in that fund. The commitments don't have to be the same.
And then you also have, of course, matching support from New South Wales government, right?
We have a couple of programs with various bodies in Australia. So some of our programs with the support of the New South Wales government under their Clean Tech Ecosystem grants. Some of our programs are supported by the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, ARENA.
Yep.
One of our programs is supported by the Queensland Investment Corporation, QIC, who are supporting the startup ecosystem in Queensland with a lot of different programs. And then we have some programs that are supported by philanthropy and high net worth individuals. So as a not-for-profit charity, our support basis is actually, as you can imagine, quite varied, but our major supporters are definitely those government organizations.
Amazing. So tell your journey, how you end up being a startup CEO, no?
That's right. That's right. And I can't say I planned it. And I can't say I plan to work in a little not-for-profit either in so many ways. So my career has been spent in product development and product management. Straight out of university, I became a product manager and then started working on more development and creation work in various industries. So in telecommunications, in media. And then it became more about the innovation over time. It was more about the craft of innovation, as product development often is. And in 2017, I started working in the energy industry. So I'd been in telecommunications, I'd been in media. They'd both been very disrupted by what was going on at that point in time. Really interesting work.
Yep.
And then I was looking for what I wanted to do next. And energy just called to me in so many ways. I've read that it was going to be an interesting space over the coming years. I'd always wanted to work in renewables from the time I was at university. So I started working in a transmission distribution company, of all places, doing innovation. But it was excellent. It gave me such a great background and knowledge in how the industry worked for an energy perspective, what the innovation was both in Australia and around the world. So both the innovation that was happening in the industry, but also the startup ecosystem. I started working with startups around the world. And that's what led me eventually to Energy Lab. So I met Energy Lab in my time at that energy company. And here I am. I didn't think I'd be here, but I love it. It's one of my favorite jobs of all time. The work is varied. It feels great doing this sort of work. Working with entrepreneurs is fascinating. They're amazing. And the types of technology that I get to come across is always interesting. Like there's always something where I'm like, you are kidding. Is that really a thing? Is this actually working? Like it blows your mind. You have to have the most open mind when it comes to what entrepreneurs are bringing in. They truly are changing the world.
I mean, if you think of it, the people are coming to you with solutions, ideas. It's a very different energy level as opposed to if you're head of, say, customer affairs in Qantas. People coming with their problems, right? And it's a very different demographics you see, very different energy level. Like I do a lot of photography as a hobby, but you always see the smiley face, right? If you're taking people's photo, they may have all the problem, but they present you the best they think they are, right?
Yeah, that's
so
right.
So you are in an amazing world. You see all the positive energy of people trying to solve problems.
Yeah, that's right. The thing that they believe in and care about, and in so many instances as an entrepreneur, are willing to put their livelihood, their time, their commitment, maybe their house on the line to make this thing happen because they believe in it. Like I agree with you. It's an awesome thing to be involved in. And it's a real pleasure to be able to help them get to that next step because, well, you see when you're working with them, the pressure that's on them, it's a challenging, hard and really long journey. Since the days of old where you created an app and you exited a year later, that is not what happens. This is a 10-year minimum commitment to get to anywhere where you're at scale. So yes, it's all the things. It's really working on something that matters and working with people that are excited about what they're doing, that are passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a very different segment of the world, no?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I agree. But, I don't know, maybe I get a bit skewed now because they're the people I talk to so often, and it gives you hope that people care and they want to make a difference.
Yes, that hope, because in a hopeless world, you talk everywhere, people talk politics, this and that. Everything is about going down, right? And then suddenly you talk to entrepreneurs in their little world saying, oh, no, I'm going to make a difference. So what do you look for when you are, I'm sure you are involved in screening entrepreneurs all the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
What are the things what attributes really makes them apart?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because in so many ways, diversity matters. So I try to keep my mind open about the entrepreneur because, and really focus, yes, it's on their capability and the team around them and their ability to do it with support, but it's also about the idea. So it's about looking at both and their journey, because so often the entrepreneurs we work with, they're engineers, they're not business people. They've come through a technical career. So often they're not the young people, actually. They're the mid-career professionals who've gone through a journey in a particular industry, in a particular area. They've had this amazing insight and they're like, I'm going to fix this. So they are people with history and experience that are trying to do what they're doing. And I like that, because that to me shows that they've got a deep understanding about what it is that they're working on. They've got a right to do that. They understand the industry. They've got industry connections, even though some of them might be super technical people that explain their idea so technically that it just takes a bit to unpack it and really see and understand the value. But that's why they need help. So we do look for that. Is this a great idea? Has it got potential? Has it got a market? Is the entrepreneur somebody who's interested in learning and understanding? Because they're not going to be perfect from day one, because everyone brings with them whatever capabilities they have. And it's not really very often you find somebody that's the full pack. Everyone needs to develop to put the right team around them, particularly when they're doing something that really hasn't been done before. So that's what we tend to look for.
Okay. Yeah, my God. And then with that mindset of always exciting people, then what do you do your non-working life? What do you do for fun? How do you manage that transition in the real world?
Yeah, what do I do in my non-working life? I don't know. I think about this a lot, as you would imagine. When I'm going for a walk on the weekend, which I love doing with my dog, I'm constantly thinking about this stuff that's just plays through my brain. And unfortunately, in my spare time, I also like listening to energy podcasts because there's so much going on. So I don't know, it's a little bit consuming in so many ways, but I have a wonderful family. I have children that are in their late teens that are, entering into university and growing their life. So that becomes my focus. But getting out, going for a walk, being in nature, reading books that in so many ways take me away from what the real world is. So I'm a massive nerd. So science fiction, fantasy books, to just have some escapism on what's real and what's not. Yeah, that's me. And just really trying to do the best with the time that I've got to work. You start to think about at some point in your career, I've got this many years of working before I retire. How do I make sure that whatever those projects are going to make the most difference, and I can walk away from a career being happy with the change that I've helped make?
And also that definition of retire has changed so much. I used to work for the State Electricity Commission of Victoria, sort of ancient. And those days, I remember colleagues will come. I'm retiring at 57. I will do their little spreadsheet on their sort of retirement, and vanished. They will never come back. But now nobody retires. I'm supposed to be technically retired also. I mean, no one retires. And then thanks to medical science, the longevity and people looking after themselves, the world is a very different place. So I don't think you can retire, especially if you're living in Melbourne. It's such a nice city.
No, but I think that's true, whether it's board or advisory or getting involved in little elements, helping people doing what they're doing. I think that's true. But I also think as much as you want to have balance in your life, I also think that's wonderful and healthy. If you're passionate about what you do and the fact that your experience can still be utilized by the world, that's a cool thing. And let's face it, with what we're doing with the energy transition and sustainability, we need as many people helping as we can. So I'm with you. That's true. I think the big retirement switch off is not so much a thing, particularly for office-based people. I think I can understand if you're one of those people that's been laboring out in the world, bending your back. I can understand not wanting to do that anymore, but giving your expertise and your brain, I think it's great that you can do that for longer. Actually, I'm sure it makes for a happier retirement.
And also people like me, I've been in public sector all my life. Now, post-retirement, I'm now trying to be an entrepreneur. So it's been fun so far.
But I think that's excellent. And I think that, when you say what's an entrepreneur, when we talk about it, I think for me so often, it's not the young person working in their parents' garage or their little flat or whatever. It is those people with experience that have got those strong insights. So, we see it all the time. And I think it's great. I think it just shows that people have got that validated experience they can put to something.
Also, things are different. I remember coming out of Melbourne Business School, somebody offered me, do you want to go and run this business for me? We'll give you equity option, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at it. Oh, I have a job back to do with the government, SCCV, very guaranteed. And they said, no, you have kids, you have family, you have mortgages, right? Now, mortgage and kids grown up. So it's a very different risk appetite right now. And of course, the experience behind you. So you know what works or what may not work, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's funny. I think in so many ways there are two, like when you're younger, you haven't got the mortgage, you haven't got the family. And then when you're older and the family might have grown up, the mortgage is paid off. They are two relatively good times where some of the risk element, yeah, you're right. It's the right time to give it a go.
Yeah, that's what my daughter said. Dad, you are the high school fresh graduate, but with your own credit card. So it's a very different. What portion of what's the demographic profile? What's the age profile, especially gender? Sort of, you said less women maybe. But anyway, can you explain?
Yeah, so definitely less women. So I think in general, startup entrepreneurs, I think it's about 30% women in general. Certainly the decarbonization sector, when it's quite energy heavy, it might be a little bit less. So in our cohorts, we tend to have that 25, 30%, maybe 40% women entrepreneurs, but they're definitely more rare, I would say. And if you think about what I mentioned before, that some of the people are coming out of the industry, that also makes sense too. If you look in the energy industry, there are more men than women in that industry. In the transmission distribution company I worked in, it was 20% women, 80% men. So even that alone creates this skew around women entrepreneurs. I would say from a background perspective, people's ethnic backgrounds and their background of origin, like which country have they come from, it's actually, that is where we have really great diversity. So whether it's people from all over the world are actually in our cohorts. We have lots of different languages spoken in our cohorts. I think that's a great level of diversity. Wow. And then in terms of background, as I mentioned, it can be anything. We definitely have people that have been researchers.
What would be the average age profile?
It's older rather than younger. It would have to be 40s plus. Oh. Easily. Yeah, it's not very often we get somebody that really truly is, in their 20s. Maybe a little bit in the idea stage, but when you get into the accelerator, even the charge program and the scale up program, you really are talking about people that are late 30s, early 40s, in their 50s, and sometimes 60s.
Oh, okay. So we have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Range is varied. The background is varied as well. The researchers in there as well, people that have found something in their research they'd like to commercialize. There's people that have come through from an industry background. One of the founders that we have at the moment is actually a second-time founder. That is less common, although it's great. One of the founders started it up. Nick Hazel, his name is. He's started a new company called Algeny, which is creating a bioreactor to grow algae, so that I guess it's creating the platform for algae creation so that algae can be the same cost as fossil fuels. And then we're in an amazing place when it comes to plastics. And well, I guess the dream is that we're in an amazing place when it comes to plastics and fuels. But he had created before V2 Foods, which is an alternative protein and alternative food company, really vegan. And he noticed that he could have leveraged algae, but the algae was too expensive. So then his next journey, he's creating that algae startup himself. So there's honestly, everyone's got their own story as to where they've ended up, but it is a diverse group from diverse backgrounds. And I think that's important because the different problems we need to solve, whether it's growing a different type of algae, figuring out how to make hydrogen cheaper, enabling the grid to take more renewables, they are very different things that we need to do. So they're, a really diverse group of people doing diverse things.
Yes, absolutely. And then you are directly sort of working on the energy transition sort of space. And could be a small project, but if it works, it can be huge and globally, right? So it's a universal application. Well, what's one of your really favorite projects or ideas that you have supported? You have some favorite?
I think, well, you try not to have favorites. So it happens every
mean,
somebody that's doing well with that side. If we think about the energy transition, actually two startups that are doing well with their growth internationally are Infravision. Infravision are a technology company that have created a drone and tensioning system effectively that helps string power lines using drones instead of helicopters. And well needed. If we look across the world at how much transition line needs to be built over the coming years, it is a lot, way more than has been done in the past. So they do it cheaper, they do it safer, and they do it more efficiently and quicker than other methods. So they were in our scale up program in 2020 and then went back to do our accelerator in 2021 because they were looking at international expansion and new products. Since then, they have just been going so well. They've gone into America, into Canada, and now they're having great success in India, where there's a lot of growth for them there. Late last year, they did I think it was their Series B round, $140 million raise, but they've got growth opportunities all throughout Europe. They're already in Australia. So they're very exciting and they are actively helping us build more transition so we can have more renewables. So very relevant. The other one's actually topical for today because they just announced their Series D. So Neara were in Energy Labs 2021 scale-up programs, but I'd met them when I was in the transmission distribution company a few years back when they were known as Powerlines Pro. And this is simplifying what they do because they keep building new capability, but they started out as a digital twin for an energy network, but they do a lot more than that at the moment. So really essential when it comes to helping utilities do renewables adoption and understanding a grid that is more complex. And they're the same. They have done so well in Australia and they're doing great when it comes to international expansion. Even though they're incredibly technical at the heart, I guess they're a B2B SaaS platform, but it's an incredibly technical B2B SaaS platform that they're doing. But they just announced, their Series D, which was $90 million AUD raised this morning. So incredible. So again, very different. One's hardware, one's software, but both of them are helping in the renewable energy transition. But, there's many more.
What's the name of the company again? Neara?
Neara, Neara.
Okay.
Yeah.
Australia is doing its really future from many countries' perspective, especially developing Asia. I mean, I bring people in the podcast and we're talking about V2G and these things happening, and many countries, their policies, regulation still doesn't fully allow effective net metering solutions, right? And when you're talking about, people doing completely opposite, wholesale market being supported by rooftop solar, homes, and millions of batteries. So it takes a lot of unpacking for many people. So then you come with these ideas, like what you mentioned, Infravision doing. These are to be able to do it scale and confidently is really good because I interviewed someone with a drone Here in the Philippines, when I was an ADB staff, they were sending drones, but these drones were, of course, big drones, locally made, softwares being developed. But then if you have a company come and say, hey, we have done it X thousand kilometers globally, now I want to do it here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very different, no?
Yeah, that one is very scalable because there is, and I know in different parts of the world, I guess power systems are being rolled out in different ways, but transmission and distribution are a key part of many countries. In other countries, they're more focused on microgrids, which is quite different, but very appropriate. But that's right. It's a very scalable thing. But I think you raised a really good point around how this energy transition and decarbonisation looks very different when you look at emerging economies. They are just as important to help decarbonise. And as much as we're in Australia and a lot of the focus of our companies is Australia, either going into parts of Asia or America or Europe, where the economies have some similarities, Energy Labs also has a great partnership with an organisation called New Energy Nexus. So where they're a global startup support organisation. They started in California, they're in New York as well, but they're really focused on some of those emerging markets where decarbonisation needs to happen as people start using more and more energy. So they're in Thailand, they're in the Philippines, they're in Vietnam, they're in India, they're in Uganda, they're in Nigeria. And I have the great pleasure of talking to people like me that run those companies in those places around the world. And it's just really interesting understanding what entrepreneurship in this space looks like in those places. It's just different in so many ways. I know the group in Uganda and Nigeria can be more about teaching people to be entrepreneurs that are selling solar and rolling that out, as opposed to entrepreneurs that are doing things like Infravision and Neara. I was also talking to a very wonderful long-term friend of mine, Jeffrey Cha, who's based out of Japan, but is American originally, who's doing work in Cambodia. And he's focusing on using solar to run irrigation systems in rice paddies. Incredible work. So that decarbonising the diesel gen sets that are the ones doing all the pumping right now. So I think it's fascinating to understand what's needed in each country and the fact that it's all entrepreneurship and innovation, and it just has to look different depending on where everyone's at and where they are in this journey.
Yeah, I mean, just this, thank you for that. And also this company that you mentioned about drone, I'm just thinking, I had a project in a country called Turkmenistan in Central Asia. So there we invested, our Asian Development Bank invested about $500 million to rehabilitate all their transmission and distribution. So one thing we wanted to do, but could not convince the government to do, because there's a large transmission lines, they were sagging with extreme heat. And we did not know how much it was sagging. We needed some data, right? So the argument was, if you go for composite material, then it will sag less, as opposed to propping the towers up, right? And then we ended up, I think the solution was to put something in the middle. But the solution could have been, if we had the data, and gathering data, this is about 7 years back, would have been impossible, because how do you do this? We are talking about 1,500 kilometer of transmission line. But if you send a sort of swarm of bees or swarm of drones, it could be done in a few days, no? Money was not an issue.
Yeah, well, that's true. I'm sure there's different ways of gathering that data with drones. I don't think Infravision focuses on that with their drones, but they do have dynamic line rating.
So what I'm saying, with a bit of tweak, right?
Yeah,
All you're trying to do on a 35-degree days, how far does it drop? On a 45-degree days, how far it drops, right?
That's right. You can actually measure that and understand. And and it's interesting how much data, no matter where you are, whether it's the edge of the grid near a household, which we're bad at getting information at, or whether it's in the middle of nowhere in a jungle or mountain, and what's going on with the lines. That's true. Data so often helps you make good decisions around how do you upgrade that line? How do you protect that line and make sure it's not doing anything bad with vegetation management? Really interesting. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. You're right. In a very short period of time, really, what's changed in terms of what we can understand about the grid? Yeah, it's huge in terms of technologies, what technology is allowing us to do now.
Especially with batteries, because With the federal government subsidy, Australia may be the largest home battery owners in the world. So I think that technology, that knowledge can help everyone in the world, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think in so many ways, the fact that Australia has such high solar ownership at a household level is creating, you think about the virtual power plant capabilities and technologies that Australia has, because it's so relevant here. We've got so many people with solar, and now with the batteries, what is it, 200,000 batteries or something they said was installed? That's insane. You're right. What is created in terms of what that means for the grid, how that works, what are the technologies you need to run that efficiently and optimize it for not only the people with batteries, but hopefully the people that don't have batteries. Yeah, it's really interesting. But yeah, battery ownership in Australia is totally going to change in the next year. It'll be so fascinating to see what difference it makes for the grid. Because recently in Victoria, when it was really hot, I saw statistics out there that the household solar didn't help to mean that, the rolling blackouts that can happen on those hot days, it took it off, which is really, truly amazing. If somebody had said that 5 years ago, I think everyone would have said you're crazy. But it totally changed what was needed in the Victorian grid at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, on that 45-degree days, I remember checking in the middle of the day. I said, who is draining my battery? Because I signed up to one of those VPP programs. It was like a peak time. My battery got drained on a little, whatever, 15 kilowatt hour, 13.5 kilowatt hour I have on a Tesla Powerwall. But it did contribute. Of course, then you take hundreds of people, thousands of people contributing. It's a power station, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly right. I think that's exactly that virtual power plant concept is exactly when you can harness so many things at the same time to do what the grid needs. It becomes a powerful asset, distributed, which is exactly what it's called, distributed energy resources. That's exactly what it's been designed to do. It's just that now, particularly with solar and batteries, that can happen. And when you've got organizations like Amber Electric, another one of our alumni, or National Renewable Network, both doing very clever but very different business models in the Australian grid with lots and lots of households signed up. It's really interesting. I think, I'd like to see in Australia more work to help people that can't afford batteries and solar to have access to some of these amazing opportunities. And I think National Renewable Network does help with that, with the way they do the relationship with the retailer and the leasing. I'd really like to see equity-focused element. But yeah, National Renewable Network are great. They effectively allow a household to have access to have their own solar and battery for free under a retailer. So they'll get cheaper energy, they'll be using renewables, and they'll have solar and a battery asset on their home. Very cool model.
And then, of course, you have electric cars with V2G. That will have a larger battery than the home batteries because 65 kilowatt hour is almost standard, right? And Australia has the largest number of Chinese EVs right now. I mean, I saw 20, 25 different models, right?
I think that's right. But you're right. Why everyone has an enormous battery in their driveway or on their street, I think it's going to change it again. And the adoption around EVs is definitely shifting. We look back not that long ago when we barely had any and it was a very small percentage, but we've gone over that 10% of new cars sold mark. And I did see in other elements of areas of Europe that they're hitting over the 50% new cars sold mark. So we've still got a long way to go, but it's great to see more models in the country. It's great to see cheaper models in the country. BYD with their Atto 1, I think they've got that really relatively cheap $20,000 to $25,000 entry point for an EV, which is so different to what it used to be like when it was just Tesla and the entry point was $130,000. But I know there's a lot more models coming on, small cars coming onto the market this year. So you're right, it's totally changing the game when it comes to EVs. And I think as long as we keep up some of the incentives around leasing and other incentives for EVs, we'll see it keep happening. And the great thing is that once you have one, the cost of operation are less.
Yes, almost non-existent.
Yeah,
especially
absolutely.
If you're charging with the home solar, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. So, fuel becomes potentially close to free and maintenance is so much less when it comes to EVs. What a wonderful story.
We just rotated my wife's car. We rotated twice, I think. tire rotation in the last 3 years. That's it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
We
That's
bought little tire sort of pump, the valve, because
yes.
I feel guilty every time you go to the gasoline station to put a tire and it's free and you end up buying an ice cream just for the notional cover your
For
guilt.
using their equipment. I think it's really exciting what it can mean for so many people. And, just to add, I think now that EVs are becoming cheaper, I think the people that can get the most value out of them are the people that could previously least afford them. I think those great benefits of less maintenance and cheaper fuel can be for everyone.
Do you have any startup looking at sort of EV opportunities, package that with what autonomous driving might bring?
Not at the moment. We've definitely worked with lots of EV focused startups in the past, more so around charging, whether it be household or charging infrastructure for businesses. I think, it wouldn't surprise me in the future if the startups I mentioned before, National Renewable Network and Amber, both looked at what it means for EVs, particularly National Renewable Network, because they're already doing this almost leasing model. They could incorporate an EV into that model. So that would be interesting. But as far as autonomous vehicles and what that means in the nature of transport, I haven't seen it. Like it was talked about a lot for a while, and it's definitely quietened down for the time being. So I think that's still one that might come with time and confidence. I think there was this, they can all drive by themselves, and everyone just got a little bit more conservative on that view. They can all drive by themselves and I can just hire one instead of hiring an Uber. I'll get that. That whole concept was talked about quite a lot, but it's definitely, I think, going to take us a little bit longer to do. But I always love it when I see people in California and they're getting the Waymos, or in China when they're in the autonomous vehicles. It's pretty cool to watch.
It is. I mean, especially the potential. Like I was explaining to someone that once electricity becomes free, which I strongly believe will be, we're seeing close to that in Australia and households. And then your transport becomes free if you don't have any sort of fuel involved and in driver involved. That means today you're ordering in Amazon sort of a gizmo one. But in future, you might just say, sorry, I want to see the entire range. Send it to me at home. I'll go through and pick up the one. Let it go. If you have a robot working behind it, also labor is free. So if your transport is free, electricity is free, labor is free.
Yeah, the whole entire transport element becomes entirely different. Actually, one of the startups that's in our co-working space in Sydney, Adiona, and they've been there for quite a few years, they're all about the optimization of delivery. So they do work with organizations like Amazon to optimize that, but also to help it be an EV and figure out the routes and everything. But you're right, that has got so much further to go. What a disrupted sector when you think about it. Originally it was the post companies, the mail companies doing that. And then it's become Amazon and others. And now the path to what that can be in the future with whether it be transport, little robots or drones is entirely open. But I must say I would love it if the trips were decarbonized and the packaging was a little bit more friendly. Then I might be a little bit more impressed.
The whole thing to be something, then open up, deliver and take it back. Why you need to have a...
Yes.
Yeah, the package.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I agree. Otherwise, the guilt around that is quite substantial at the moment. But yes, I think there's great opportunities for that in the future.
Yeah, I mean, on packaging, I felt it really badly once. We delivered a off-grid solar component on a project in the Kyrgyz Republic.
Yeah.
Remote, pristine area. I went there to install, and I was talking to the people when they unboxed all of those and put the box with it, had a DC fridge, a DC television, and I was saying, what will happen to those box? And this guy didn't understand because they said they will be here. I said, here, I mean here. He said, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
Put it on the side. And I said, oh my God. So if we do scale up, my idea was that, okay, maybe we wrap everything with a blanket. And the box, when we need to get some clever design, or the box can be turned into a shelf that you can put inside the home. Kids can put. Really, I mean, once you see these places where there is no garbage collector, the council picks up all the thing that all the guilt gets chucked away somewhere else. Yeah, the packaging is a big problem.
It really is a problem. I had the great pleasure of going and visiting Vietnam up in the hills in Sapa. And it was the same, there isn't official rubbish collection that collect that. And yeah, it really hits you where you see where the things that we use end up when there's not collection. Mind you, sometimes I think the collection just grabs it and hides it away so we don't see it anymore. But I agree with you, that fundamental element of packaging really needs to be decarbonised and made more sustainable. And I think there's fantastic opportunities in the entrepreneurial space for that to happen.
Absolutely. Megan, we have done about 50 minutes. Is there anything I could have
Woo.
asked or you want to share?
Oh, look, I think we've really covered some of the innovations and entrepreneurial elements a lot. I think, and we've talked about how challenging the entrepreneurial journey can be for people. I think they're wonderful things to cover, certainly in Australia and other places around the world. I think the only other thing I'd like to add is that, this is a sector that, in many ways is helping to change the face of energy, but it's also a sector that if we treat innovation right and support it appropriately in Australia and other countries, it can become a real value creator in our economy. And that's how I'd like to see us looking at entrepreneurship and innovation. Not that it's just this great thing where some people have made money because they invested or really changed that on the, it's like, how do we leverage some of these things appropriately? Because as I talked about before, the VPPs in Australia are there because we've got these really interesting elements of our solar and battery that where we can create solutions. So how do we leverage these so that some of these elements can be the new value streams, the new economic engine for Australia as we turn down our use of fossil fuels, as we turn down coal and turn down gas? Where are those value creators coming from? And it can be this sector. So we should treat it like that, treat it like an economic powerhouse where we can create new businesses that go around the world, where we can create new jobs, where people can work in doing fascinating things for the world. So I think that's the big opportunity that I'd like people to think about and understand, that these companies can be the next Atlassian or Canva for Australia, or even more, they could be the next BHP for Australia. So let's think about it like that so we can transition our economy over the coming decades to something that's valuable for the world and valuable for our lifestyles.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you. And also, what would you suggest on top of that for our wannabe women entrepreneurs to welcome them, and what are the challenges? What should they do differently, right?
Yeah, I don't know if they need to do anything differently. I think they should definitely seek help. If they need help, they should find it. There's lots of people and organizations that are focused on helping women to succeed in this sector. I think they should know that we need their ideas. There's still a lot that needs to be solved. So come into this space with your experience and your knowledge of what needs to change and help make it change. There's many women that they could look at that have been successful in this sector, but we need many more. So please do it. Come and make a difference. I think there's not many places where you can change the way people live and change the environment. This is it. More women in decarbonisation would be wonderful.
And how does people find you? What's the best way to reach you out?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're easy to find. So our website, energylab.org.au, all of us are on our website. So the whole entire team, you can just find our emails there. You can contact us. All the information about our programs is on our website. But if you're not sure where to start, hello@energylab is the place to go. Yeah, we definitely don't hide. We're not hard to find. So just get in contact and ask a question, or come to one of our events and check out what it's all about. Don't be scared. There's nothing precious about this community of people. They're a group of people that are trying to change the world, and they're very open and very welcoming and very willing to help other people. There's no airs about anyone that's in this ecosystem. They're just all trying to change the world.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for a really good chat. It's definitely put me in a good mood for today, remembering all of and reflecting on the awesome things that are going on. So thank you, Sahel, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Energypreneurs. Let's work together electrifying everything. This podcast is available in audio form on your favorite platforms and in video on YouTube. See you on next episode. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel, and we always appreciate your comments.